Good evening. As mourners in India come to terms with the many deaths and injuries caused by a stampede at the world's largest religious festival, calls are growing in the aftermath of the tragedy for better ways to control large crowds and keep people safe. Well, tonight we examine what went wrong at Kumbh Mela and what can be done to stop something similar from happening again. But first, A News's Newshour sent this report from New Delhi.
Guy, the stampede took place in the northern Indian city of Prayagraj, which is hosting the Kumbh Mela, the world's largest religious gathering. This is about 600 kilometers away from New Delhi, where millions of pilgrims have been gathering for weeks to take a dip at a point that marks the confluence of the river Ganges and one more river, considered to be the holiest point according to the Hindu religion. The crush took place very early in the morning, Wednesday local time, on a day when 100 pilgrims were expected to take a holy bath at that point. Eyewitnesses have described scenes of chaos and confusion, with some saying that a security barricade broke down, others saying there was poor crowd management and not enough room for the devotees who had gathered along the banks of the river Ganges, and that's when people started falling onto the pilgrims who were already in the water. Now, security teams and officials on the ground have denied any sort of lapse. They've downplayed the event and simply called it an accident. In the immediate aftermath of this tragedy, there was also a vacuum of information, with critics accusing the government of trying to suppress what exactly happened. But calls are growing for more security to be deployed here and for better arrangements. The government claims that things are now under control. But before this event wraps up in a month's time, 400 million pilgrims will have attended the Kumbh Mela in that city. We did see officials trying to spread out the pilgrims who had gathered along the banks of the Ganges in the aftermath of the tragedy to ensure there's no overcrowding at one point, and more security teams have been deployed on the ground as well. Unfortunately, stampedes are not uncommon in India where religious gatherings are concerned. Last year, 120 people had died at a similar event, though much smaller in scale, in the same region. Government data shows that in the last few years there have been 47 crowd crushes, with experts blaming poor planning, overcrowding, and the lack of clearly defined emergency exits, saying these are the main reasons for these tragedies. Neha Punya for A News in New Delhi.
Well, to get an idea of why this is such a huge festival and what the response has been, we can speak to Tathagata Bhattacharya now, an author and senior journalist based in New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us. What is the Kumbh Mela then, and why is it so significant?
See, the Kumbh Mela is a congregation of the faithful amongst the Hindus in India, which happens at a gap of 12 years, often 6 years. There is things like half Kumbh, there are things like full Kumbh. And for example, the one which is happening right now, because Kumbh, it depends on the celestial constellations, how they align. Basically, it's the alignment of Jupiter, the Sun, and the Moon. And apparently this year, the constellation has aligned in a manner that last happened 144 years back. So apparently this is the biggest of the Kumbhs. And as you can imagine, in a country with a population like India, I mean, even if, say, 1 or 2% of the believers land up in that place, that will be quite something, I mean, like quite something spectacular, obviously, for the media, for a photographer, but it will be a nightmare for whoever is trying to manage the process and the administrative setup that is required. And look, I can't tell you the veracity of the facts and the figures. The government has claimed this year that apparently 450 million people are going to congregate at the Kumbh. Now, I find it a little hard to believe because that means almost 40% of India's Hindu population.
And can you explain a bit more about the spiritual significance?
I mean, it's supposed to be one of the things that those who are like staunch believers, the pious and the stuff, they believe that uh, 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 dipping and having a bath in the Ganges. The Ganges is a holy river in the annals of Hindu mythology and the religion itself. And this is the time apparently where when to take such a bath, and there are associated things like all your sins are washed away and stuff, and whatever, and apparently it's auspicious, it's good for the family, it's good for your business, it's supposed to bring in good luck.
If these events happen quite often then, does this latest tragedy point to any failings on the part of the authorities to ensure safety?
This is not the first time this has happened. And in 1954, I think more than 200 people died. And this has been happening. And one thing I will say that the death toll has kind of progressively come down. So there have been improvements in the safety measures taken and stuff. But when you literally have millions and millions of people, and this is not a big city where people are congregating. It doesn't have the infrastructure. It is a relatively, it's a big town. It's one of the major cities, but let's say it's a fraction of, say, what a metropolitan city like Delhi or Bombay or Calcutta will be. And suddenly you have an influx of not just millions of people, also millions of vehicles, and it's total chaos. So how far can the authorities also manage such an event? I don't know. I mean, they try their best, and also you have to understand there are a lot of unruly elements in this crowd, and you have these giant hordes of seers and sadhus and saints, those who don't listen to any kind of diktats or any kind of thing, because it's their holy thing, and even the cops don't mess with them. Even the administration doesn't mess with them, because you can't really, you can't really impose yourselves upon them. So a lot of unruly things do happen in such congregations, and I guess the latest incident is one such manifestation.
So what is the response been from the government and Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
The Prime Minister has sent out a written message as well, mourning the deaths and saying that all possible help will be given to the injured, and the same has come from Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's department. And also there are other related state governments, because like the ones in Uttarakhand, in MP, and those who are linked to Uttar Pradesh, the state of Uttar Pradesh, there have been statements of solidarity from almost everyone, because it's a tragic event. The people go there for a purpose, and then such a thing happens. It's a tragedy. And it shouldn't have happened. And I hope some kind of accountability will be a mechanism of accountability will be looked at.
Do you think then that there is still a place for such huge festivals in the 21st century.
Yes, you might say it should not be encouraged, but at the same time, you have to understand that the current dispensation in power right now in India, it cannot but help, encourage such events, because I mean it is seen to be championing the cause of the political Hindutva. So even if it's detrimental for the society and for the population, it cannot go back on its core uh, ideology and core beliefs. Because I think it's a catch-22 situation for them. It's not that they don't realize. And also you have to understand another thing. This is a huge business, most importantly. For example, this year, the event is apparently generating revenues over $25 billion. So there is a very important component of business where there is media, there are these health companies, healthcare supplements and companies. Then there are these, the Ayurveda, the companies. There are the printing presses. There are corporate majors. Everyone is there. I mean, the food court apparently has Starbucks and Domino's as well. So everyone wants to make some money, because you have this captive audience of so many millions of people, and they have to eat, they have to stay somewhere, they have to they have to drink, and so people are making good money. So I think apart from the faith and apart from the apparent lack of logic, the business side of the thing is another very crucial determinant. And no, I don't think there will be any kind of stopping such events.
And finally, can I ask you, with such tragic events like this, do you think that lessons now will finally be learned?
Absolutely. I mean, there is hardly any doubt. And I think the government also concedes. Already they have taken a lot of steps. For example, it is no longer as unruly as it used to be. Now the government's cap numbers. For example, there are numbers capped every hour, that these many people will be allowed near the river at any given point of time and stuff. Because previously there used to be no such rules and no such regulations. But now those rules and regulations have been put in place, but still such incidents happen. But I have to say that the instances of such incidents have come down drastically.
Mr. Bhattacharya, thank you very much indeed for joining us there from New Delhi. Well, that is all we have time for on this edition of News Hour. Please do stay with us on A News for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here in Baku, we wish you a very pleasant evening ahead.